CH21-KISS and S, keep it stupid and simple. There is a very popular axiom that few people seem to follow in marketing, which is KISS, keep it simple, stupid. My version is even more basic, keep it stupid and simple. It's not that your audience is stupid, or that you're talking down to your prospect for the sake of simplicity. It's just that you want your message to be so basic and uncomplicated that it doesn't take much to understand it. Simplicity is probably one of the most important of the physiological triggers, yet it seems to be violated more often than any other in marketing. You must keep everything simple. You must keep your entire sales pitch simple, your product simple, and most importantly, the offer simple. This doesn't mean that I encourage my students to write advertising that is so simple a fifth grader could read it. That's not what I mean by simple. The advertising copy should be read by the most educated people as well as the least educated and come across clearly. It is not good style to write either up or down to anybody. The use of big words to impress is one example of talking down to somebody. If you try to impress with your use of words, somebody who isn't familiar with your fancy words will be lost. Use simple, easy to understand. Words are, after all, stories, emotional images, each having an impact sometimes greater than we think. Using simple words has the greatest impact. Words that everybody can understand have a greater effect than words that most people have difficulty with. This may sound obvious, but the big word users will say, I want to keep up my image. Good. And it will hold down your sales in the process. If you have a tendency to complicate things, you're not going to succeed in writing good direct response advertising copy. You probably won't be too successful at selling in person either. I like to tell my students to focus. Focus on what you are trying to accomplish and eliminate things that either complicate your presentation or aren't necessary. A good example of how simplicity works in direct response is what happened to me when Murray Raffel, a dear friend and a great public speaker, approached me. He had been in touch with the people who developed the Swiss Army watch and wondered if I would be interested in marketing the product in the United States. Yes, I was interested. A meeting was arranged, in which I was going to review the line of watches. At the meeting I was presented with 3 styles and 3 colors in each style, for a total of 9 different watches. One was a men's style, the second was for women, and the third was for children. The colors were black, red, and khaki. I examined the watches, learned the history, and in general became very knowledgeable about the watches themselves. Then came the big question. Mr. Sugarman, you've examined the watches. What do you think? I looked over the watches, thought for a few minutes, and answered, I'd like to run just the men's watch in black in the Wall Street Journal to test the concept. The watch company executives looked perplexed. Why don't you offer all the styles? Look at how many more people you'll reach if you offer 9 different styles. You'll reach women and children in addition to men, and you'll give them all a color choice. I told them that in my experience, keeping it simple was the best approach, and that offering a customer too many choices was a very dangerous thing to do. But no matter what I said, they would not agree. Logic says, Mr. Sugarman, that offering more of a choice will result in more sales. I knew from my experience that logic wouldn't work, so I then came up with an idea to prove that I was right. I offered to run 2 separate ads, in what is called an A-B split. That is where the Wall Street Journal prints 2 separate versions of the same ad, version A and version B, to be delivered in the same area at the same time. So one home will get version A of the ad and the next door neighbor gets version B. This is a very good way to test 2 different ads, to determine the winning approach. I offered to do the test, and ran the 2 ads with almost identical copy and graphics. One of the few differences was that in ad A, I showed the men's watch along with the child's watch for size perspective, whereas in ad B, I showed just the men's watch. I then listed each one of the choices 9 in all in ad A and just 1 in ad B. When both versions ran, the ad that featured only 1 men's watch outpulled the other version, that featured 9 models with a surprising 3-to-1 ratio. In short, for every watch we sold from the ad that featured the 9 styles, we sold 3 from the other ad, that showed just the 1 black watch. I knew almost instinctively that to give the consumer a confusing array of choices meant that the consumer would back off and not buy. First, they would have to make a choice. This is often not easy. Often you must make the choice for the buyer, by selecting the best model or style and making it the one you feature. In fact, your prospect likes that and appreciates it when you do it. My pitch in my mail order ads was simple. I've looked at all of the products in this category and have personally selected this one, as the best one for quality, features, and price. My prospects didn't have to go out and comparison shop, they didn't have to call their local neighborhood electronics guru. No, they trusted us and appreciated our selection of this product above all others, as the one for them. When would I show all 9 watches? Later, in my catalog or in the sales situation, after my prospect became a customer. Once I've located those people interested in Swiss Army watches and sold them one, I would then show them all 9 models in my catalog. By the time my catalog reaches my customer, he or she has been qualified as a watch buyer. I can now offer larger selection. 55 of 89. Another good example of the power of simplicity occurred during the production of a half-hour TV commercial I was doing for a product that reduced wrinkles and improved the skin. Called Moricel, the product was truly revolutionary. I had been taking it for a few months, and had noticed dramatic results. We did 2 double-blind studies that proved the product really did work. But there was one major problem. For the quickest results, you had to take 2 pills a day for the first 3 months, and then reduce the intake to 1 pill a day. This violated my principle of simplicity, and I was very concerned that the consumer was going to be confused. I was doing things backward. My pills would cost double the amount for 3 months, and then cost half of that during the 4th month and beyond. And here I was recommending taking 2 pills a day for 3 months and then 1 pill a day for the rest of the time. It was really confusing and not very simple. So I did 2 things to ensure the success of the show. The first was to have the host in the show verify the dosage and tell how the program worked, even after I had already explained it. We devoted almost 3 minutes to explaining the complicated offer, to resolve all anticipated questions. The second thing I did was shoot additional footage with just a simple offer. Moricel costs $25 a box and a box lasts 1 month. That was it. It was very simple and very easy to understand. I knew that I would have to supply my customers with 2 boxes for the first 3 months, with one of the boxes being at my expense, if the second version of the ad worked and the complicated one did not. Sure enough, after testing, the version that worked was the simple one. It outpulled the first one by a very large number. We ended up giving away an enormous amount of product in order to keep the offer simple, and make the program simple as well. Simplicity in direct response is critical. It is also important in sales. Always make your offer simple. Realize that only after your prospect becomes your customer can you present more complicated offers and products. And always remember that the simpler your offer, the greater your chances of making the sale in the first place. An effective salesperson is one who tells prospects what they should buy. This salesperson narrows down the choices, making them easier for the prospect, and keeps the sale process simple and easy. This should be one of the primary roles of the salesperson. It can be done quite easily by making your offer so simple that the prospect has little choice but to accept your offer. The biggest problem I have seen in selling in general comes when the offer is much more complicated than it needs to be. Simplify your offer. Make it so easy to buy that the prospect simply needs to pick up a pen and sign on the dotted line. Then you've got a surefire road to sales success. Trigger 21 Simplicity. 56 of 89. CH22-winning through legal bribery. Have you ever received mailings from charities that included a small gift? The gifts are usually address stickers, colorful stamps, or some other very inexpensive token. Or how about those mailings with surveys that include a dollar bill or return envelope with a return stamp? In both cases you may have experienced a slight touch of guilt. After all, you've received something of value and you feel an obligation to take some action in return, such as sending in a donation or answering the survey. The Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes mailing is another direct marketing and advertising example that depends on guilt to drive its sales. The clever marketing people there discovered that the more materials they stuffed in their mailing pieces, the less people tended to throw them out and the more guilty they felt if they didn't get involved and respond. Repetition also creates guilt. Keep sending somebody mailings, and after a while he or she may feel guilty that they haven't responded. I used the repetition technique when I sold ski lifts for a company called Ski Lift International. Each week I sent out a mailing with a small premium gift enclosed. One mailing would have a button with a slogan on it, another an unusual mailing piece, and still another an involvement device. After a while, many of the recipients felt guilty and eventually responded. Some even apologized for not responding earlier. I was combining repetition with sending something of value to achieve a sense of guilt. Remember that wonderful example of my airplane tail collection and what happened when I received a beautiful handcrafted walnut chest from the Franklin Mint. I felt so guilty that I had received this expensive piece of furniture that I had to reciprocate to show my appreciation. So I continued collecting the tails, even though it was one of the stupidest, dumbest, and intellectually deficient things any normal human would do. And I'm not deficient. These are good examples of the use of guilt, or, as some may call it, reciprocity. The idea is that I give you something first, and you feel a need to reciprocate. But how do you use this technique in a sales situation? Simply by giving something to the prospect to create a sense of obligation. The prospect then feels that he or she owes you something and that something is often in order for your product or service. How do you use this valuable tool in a personal selling situation? By offering the prospect a small gift or premium item. The prospect will reciprocate with a greater willingness to buy from you. The gift could be simply buying the prospect lunch or dinner. Bringing a piece of candy when you make a sales visit, sending the prospect newspaper articles that might interest her, even just keeping in communication with the prospect. All these are examples of ways to create a sense of obligation that will in turn create a further feeling of guilt and prompt some form of reciprocity. It is for this reason that Walmart does not allow its buyers to go out to lunch or dinner with salespersons unless the Walmart buyer pays for the meal. Walmart simply does not want its buyers to feel guilty or feel like they have to reciprocate to any sales agent. Many corporations have specific policies forbidding employees from accepting gifts, even around Christmas. Letters go out to suppliers advising them of this policy. If gifts are received, they are reported, the giver of the gift is warned, and the gift is put in a pile for charity. 57 of 89. Even in Congress, ethics requirements have tightened up. Recently a gift of $300 worth of wine to the former agricultural secretary was deemed a bribe, and the secretary was censured. Some gifts are quite generous. In politics, gifts are a way of life. In fact, reciprocity greases the wheels of politics. Ironically, this is one area of commerce where gifts are legal but only if they are within a certain limit. Even these laws have loopholes, as there are blatantly large gifts given by substantial individuals in return for special favors. Moral and ethical factors are always involved in just how much a salesperson can give to a prospect without it appearing to be a bribe. But there are many other creative ways to give to a prospect to evoke a sense of guilt and reciprocity without the use of a bribe. Some of them are even free. Take, for example, the free opportunities available on the internet. You could send a prospect a joke each week to lighten his day. No sales message, just a simple joke each week over the internet to your prospect's email address, and you've developed an appreciated prospect at practically no cost. Or you can even send articles over the internet that your prospect might find interesting to keep the prospect current and at the same time indebted to you for your assistance and thoughtfulness. You can use effective sales techniques designed only to serve your customer and create a sense of guilt. For example, I needed a suitcase and went to Marshall Field's, a department store chain in the Chicago area. I went to the luggage department and examined a number of suitcases and came to one that I particularly liked. It had a special feature to allow me to store a suit very efficiently without causing too many wrinkles. The salesman approached me and asked me if I could use some help, and indeed I had a question. Could you tell me how you would place a suit in this compartment of the suitcase? The salesman started to show me where the suit would go and then said, the best way to really demonstrate this is to show you with my jacket. He then kneeled on the floor, opened up the suitcase, took off his own jacket, folded it and placed it in the compartment, showing me exactly how it was done. He had made such a major effort to answer my question that I felt compelled to buy from him. By virtue of his extra effort, he created a sense of guilt in me. Consider many of the creative ways to instill the feeling of guilt in your prospect. You'll find your selling to be a lot easier with a receptive buyer when you grease the way with this powerful physiological trigger. Trigger 22 Guilt. CH23-anal retention really helps. Being specific and precise in your explanations and statements is very important, in part 58 of 89, because it can affect your credibility. Let me first give you an example. If I say, do dentists everywhere use and recommend CapSnap toothpaste, it sounds like typical advertising lingo puffery designed to sell a product. It's so general that it will probably cause a prospect to discount the statement you have just made and maybe everything else you say. But if I say, 92% of new dentists use and recommend CapSnap toothpaste, it sounds much more believable. The consumer is likely to think that we did a scientific survey and that 92% of the dentists actually use the toothpaste. When people perceive certain general statements as puffery or typical advertising babble, those statements are at best discounted and accepted with some doubts. In contrast, statements with specific facts can generate strong believability. Of course, the specific facts must be honest and accurate. I once wrote an ad for a company I created called Bathroom Galleries, a collectibles company. In the ad I stated the exact cost of running the ad and the exact cost of the product. I clearly demonstrated through specific figures that we weren't making any profit from the offering. It was so successful that it was oversubscribed, which was my goal. In my Blue Blocker infomercials, I state the specific reasons why blue light isn't good for your eyes. I explain that blue light focuses in front of the retina, which is the focusing screen of the eye, and not on the retina as do other colors. So, when you block blue light, you block those rays that don't focus on your retina, and therefore objects appear clearer, sharper, and more defined. I'm specific. It sounds believable. And the statement is a lot better than just saying, blue blocker sunglasses let you see clearer, sharper and with more definition. If you're describing a product that works with the circulatory functions of the body, you can talk about 242 miles of blood vessels, instead of miles of blood vessels. When you talk about feet, instead of saying, there are a lot of nerve endings in the bottoms of your feet, you can say instead, there are 72,000 nerve endings at the bottoms of your feet. You are stating a fact and being specific, as opposed to making a general or vague statement. You are more believable. You have more credibility. There's one other benefit to being specific. By being specific you sound like you're an expert on your product to imply that you've really investigated it and are very knowledgeable. This too builds trust and confidence. People in general are very skeptical about advertising, and often don't believe many of the claims stated in ads. But when you make a specific claim using exact facts and figures, your message is much more credible and often trusted. Using this knowledge in selling is a powerful way to make your sales presentation more effective. Using specifics instead of generalities and facts instead of approximations will make a dramatic difference in the believability of your presentation. Be specific in your statements and your facts to build credibility and believability. Trigger 23 Specificity.